Dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm very glad to be here, and I thank the organizers for the invitation. Some words only about our company, founded in 1935 by my father as a small machine building factory. My father died in 1959 when I was 8 and my sister were 2. So the mother took on the business. We lost the father to the cemetery and the mother to the business. And for 30 years, the mother developed the company from 150 employees to 3,500 until she passed away in 1989. I am the next generation. I have given over 2 years ago the chairmanship of the supervisory board to my oldest daughter and the ownership of the shares, holding only 2% of the half of the company that is mine, to my 6 children. Please expect no rocket science from me. I was only trained to be a lawyer. Instead, I would like to present to you rather common sense ideas and the fruits of a life as entrepreneur. Therefore, no causal or final reckonings. I figure that you are all used to scan presentation slides on a screen for information. As to that, I must disappoint you, yet ask you kindly to lend me your ears for a couple of minutes, as I have prepared only spoken words for you. Thank you for your understanding and goodwill. I have nothing to teach you, as I do not know better. Yet I will feel accomplished if I will have given you cause to reflect, to meditate, to think about some questions from a slightly different angle, and to rethink and reassess attitudes and actions, as well as relationships. As a famous German constitution law professor and judge once stated that our democracy owes itself to prerequisites that it cannot produce by itself. I would restrain my topics today on such things: the prerequisites for a succeeding life and business, the things that we cannot make and cannot take for granted. Quoting Psalm 127, "Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain." We all want our business to thrive, to be healthy, and to grow. For that, we owe our business, that is our co-workers and the larger community, we owe them mainly 2 things: thrift and trust. Thrift, because there has never been a business built on conspicuous or excessive consumption. A business is a living being and needs to grow. We have to be the first and main financiers of such growth, we the families. Trust, because it is the most important factor of production whenever people work together. As companies consist of people, is it preferable to control these, or to let our co-workers act as they see fit and their conscience allows them? Our post-Enlightenment era is characterized by control. Control over nature by the tools provided by science and technology, and over people by psychology, sociology, business administration, power, information. The means of control which are available to us have fueled our mania to control. People nowadays often control for controlling's sake, eavesdrop on others, spy, collect data about them, and strive to calculate from their past and present actions the forecast of what they will decide in the future. The power of instruments to influence by means of communication and mass psychology, public relations and brainwashing, nudging and framing have increased tremendously in the past century and have been shamelessly used by mass media, military and governments, and big business. They have become real weapons of psychological warfare, aiming at and obtaining power over people. Yet, would you really like to be treated like this? Objectified as a human being? Isn't the old rule, do to others as you would like to be done by, the wiser approach, more adequate to our human nature? I would suggest we ought not to treat our customers, our employees, and our family that way, as we are bound to them by links of love, which implies respect. For Christians who see in every human being the likeness of God, the latter attitude towards others is obvious, and considering that these others are close to us and bound to us by common goals, hopes, and commitments, also quite easy to achieve. As to our control over nature, I notice that we are tempted to pass the limits of our humanness. We all remember the obsessive drive to control the outbreak of a viral disease, thereby developing the goal of zero COVID, as well as constantly the drive to achieve zero carbon in order to control not just the weather, nay, to control the climate altogether, and thereby to save the world, our Mother Earth, and humanity. Many of our contemporaries are so proud of their power, their presumed knowledge and wisdom, and their fantastic supercomputers, that they forget their last remnants of modesty and behave like little gods, coming dangerously close to an infringement of the first commandment, "Thou shalt have no other God beside me." They have eaten fruit from the tree of knowledge, yet they have not discovered that they are naked. Our fear of the natural catastrophes, wars and terrorist acts, of all the things we cannot control, even of ourselves, is a direct consequence of our having tasted the forbidden fruit of wanting to be like God. And fear was never a good advisor. What positivists and communists lack is the concept of eternity. It means that there is no limit to time nor to God's presence. He has always been before all time and will forever be after the end of this world. And we are his children and entitled to be in his presence also forever, provided we accept him and atone for our misgivings. We may and should daily strive to do good and to contribute to a better world, but not dare to substitute this world which he gave us by a new one. There is absolutely no need to build a godless communist society, nor is it wise to build a technocratic world government, as human nature will not be changed by human endeavors. Then there is our wish to control ourselves, our thoughts, our dreams, our imperfections, our health, our waistline, etc. The term is self-improvement. Let us not forget that we are creatures, as are all other living beings. We have been granted the privilege to be creative too, to shape the world around us, to solve problems, to invent new things, to breed animals and plants, in fact, even to procreate and live on in our children. This is part of eternity, and it happens in our families. The continuity in time, the continuity of life, or eternity happens in our families. Because we have children and we give on life that comes from millions of years and thousands of generations to the future. We had better accept our condition and not reject his love. That way, we can live in better harmony and satisfaction with ourselves and our environment if we refrain from wanting to control everything and everyone in our companies. It took me more than 50 years of life to make this experience. I discovered that the opposite concept to power is trust and love. Today, I can trust my 17,000 employees all over the world, even without knowing most of them personally. As you know, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin famously said, "Trust is good, but control is better." His empire ended spectacularly and pathetically 30 years ago, whilst, however, some poisonous remnants still linger. Thus, gratitude for the creation and for being a creature is not the worst starting point from which to start a life or to build a business. I could learn in my mid-50s that it was not important that I was better or more competent or knowledgeable at a given task than my co-workers, but that, quite the opposite, it was good for the company, and as a consequence for the family too, to have many people who are more competent at their respective tasks, professions, and jobs than I could ever have been. That is a consequence of the fact that in 1959 my father died. The company needed non-family members as managers to run the business. My mother coordinated them, but she was not a professional. She had been a secretary before. So this was a sad moment, but it was good for the development of the company, because often the limit is when the family members are no longer sufficient in competence and in quantity to manage the business, that the family cannot develop trust to people who are not family members. And that often limited companies. And the countries where they could do this, it's called sociability, where they could trust others, non-family members, are the companies and the countries who have most seen economic growth. Rather, I had to be as good as possible at my task, which is a bit different from theirs. The demand was not to be the better engineer, business administrator, or IT specialist, but to be a good entrepreneur. This task included the modesty and lack of ambition to accept that others were better and could earn more than myself. My job has been to help attract and retain the best management people, to help them get along well together and inspire the workforce, and to make sure they felt comfortable and at ease in fulfilling our common goal, to serve our customers well and to treat our employees well, to take advantage of innovations and to help our nerds to innovate themselves and not to pay more taxes than absolutely necessary. Why is it less difficult than we'd like to think to have trust in other people? I think trust is rather about believing than about knowing for sure. I do believe that the human being wants to retribute any received benefit or favor and feels uneasy when she gets something for free. Such feeling of unease is related to shame and to our need to feel autonomous as individuals. It is fed by our conscience of self-respect and honor. It has been an unfortunate development that the welfare state has affected this human quality by creating entitlements that can be demanded from the state, if necessary even by decision of the courts. In parallel, the state has promoted the fallacy that all money comes from it, that it can generate limitless amounts of cash, and that when we receive some of it from the state, we do not even have to say thank you. Thus, too much generosity from the public purse spoils the citizen who would rather prefer to perform himself, to develop himself as a human creature, and to prove his worth. All of us want to be thanked, and nobody wants to be bought. Likewise, within the company, monetary rewards, while important and inevitable, can be topped by acknowledgement, by praise, and by thanks and other moral rewards. So let us avoid to treat our staff in ways by which we would not like to be treated ourselves. As an entrepreneur, I'm in the business of saving. I'm just changing from a 15-year-old car I have driven for 13 years now to a new one. I am being rewarded for helping to build capital in my company, capital of all kinds. To do so requires to be prepared not only to take risks, but to renounce consumption and to shun waste. That means to save. I am aware that, as far as the owner family is concerned, probably nothing is of greater interest to the employee than the question how the family deals with the earnings of their business. We demonstrate and convey the trust we have in our people by reinvesting almost the entire profit back into the business. And we are therefore rewarded by the employees with trust, cooperation, and confidence in the future and growth. Now some words to the prospective successors in Slovakian family business, to the younger generation that asks itself what direction to choose for their professional lives. Let me first explain what I think leadership is. I understand leadership as a difficult task to find out what I am in this world for. It is basically about identity. I can begin by finding out where I come from, to whom I owe my existence, not only my physical, my healthy body, my soul, what I could learn. I will find out that everything I am and have, I owe to others, and nothing to myself. So how can I retribute my debt, and to whom? I suggest you consult this question with God in prayer, as it is He to whom everything human is owed. His advice is worth more than that of a teacher or a vocation consultant, even also than a parent. What is my destination? All right, the body goes to the grave and the soul to heaven. But before, who am I and what is my purpose? Certainly I owe something to the people who have fed, clothed, and sheltered me, my family, but also to the people who with their work have contributed to the wealth of the family, the employees. Leadership grows from identity. Once I discover my fate and my endeavor, my vocation, what I was called for to be in this world, I can be quietly self-centered and convincing for others. Leadership is not about knowing better. It isn't about knowing at all. It is about being. Born into a family business and being the only son or daughter, the call is straightforward and simple: to lead the business into a prosperous future. To lead means then to serve a pre-existent purpose. It is like in a monarchy. You should not abdicate when your father is a king and you are the crown prince. Noblesse oblige. Your freedom of choice is a little restricted, but at least you remain free to choose in the supermarket and in the marriage market. The satisfaction which stems from running a company that bears your family name and to be an integral part of it is unbelievable. And if your employees identify with and are proud of the company they work in, why shouldn't you? If your inheritance contains an industrial enterprise, you must care for it and lead it to the next generation. The deeper reason for this duty is the conscience that it is the people in the company who have built it up and keep it alive. It is a respect for these people and their work what prohibits you from selling them, which is ultimately what an enterprise sale is about, as the highest value of a business resides in its people. In exactly the same way as you inherit the seniority and thus leadership in a family, when the patriarch dies, you must assume the leadership of the family business when its leader passes away or becomes incapacitated. This duty befalls you not by inheritance law, but by family ethics and tradition. Have we already forgotten that the very word tradition means passing an often cultural value on to the next generation? Eternity, continuity. Since humankind exists, humans have behaved like this. Therefore, we at Kärcher deal in cleaning machinery and solutions, and not in company shares. We are industrialists with a vocation and not investment bankers. Our business is to create value for our customers through technology by making work easier and more affordable and effective, and not to make money out of anything we can get hold of. Money is not an end, but a means and a gauge for how we are doing. What is spiritual about the family business? And what is spiritual about leadership? Spirit is what makes us and all animate things and beings alive. Spirit enables us to love, to trust, to speak, to understand, to communicate with others, to invent, and to consult with God in prayers. Spirit gives us a conscience to tell right from wrong, makes us aware that we will have to account for our deeds and omissions, attitudes and failures, gives us charisma to convince others, and doubts and scruples about the consequences of our actions. Spirit reminds us that we are always seen by our benevolent, kind, and forgiving Father in heaven, and lets us understand that it is heaven where we are heading to. It is through spirit that we experience our provenance as a guideline for our destination. It is spirit what teaches us that it is not about what we want, but that the right things be done and happen, and the wrong ones are avoided. Thy will be done, we pray in each Our Father. And this is precisely, I think, what real leadership is about, that the community, that is the family and company, comes first, and the individual only second. Thus, leadership is service. And service is rather a duty than a right. Identity. Who am I? To be sure of one's identity is a psychic basic need of every individual and must not be toyed with. As we cannot escape our roots, we had better embrace them. When I was born, my parents chose a name for me. With this name, they then presented me to God in baptism. Now God knows me by my first name, in English, Christian name. Later, they taught me that I am known and loved by God. My last name is given by my family, into which I was born. It tells me and others to which family I belong. Family, the first, smallest, and closest knit community I belong to. It extends my identity long before any ethnicity, nationality, race, religion, political affiliation, soccer club, etc. These are all identity elements who are like concentric rings around the main identity. But the main identity stems from things we have no influence about and we had not a chance to choose. So this is, embrace them if you can't change them. Only the last outermost ones I could choose, all the others are inescapable. Then there is in some Slavic countries the patronym, the otchetstvo. It tells what my father's name is and links me once more to my filial and biological origins. Therefore, it is so important that mothers tell, at least to the child, who his father is, in order not to deprive him of his or her identity. With the baptism, I become part of a church. But actually, I do not belong to the church, but to its head, Jesus Christ, who already knows me by name. In the church, a man-made organization with its hierarchies, other individuals are inserted into my relationship with God and can thus influence the development of my identity, beliefs, self-conscience by doctrines, dogmas, catechism, ideologies, and teachings. But important criterion in cases of doubt remains my relationship with Jesus and God, not with the intermediaries, and that he knows me by my name. In adolescence, I may start to waver about who I am, who and how I should become. I have been changing so much from child to adult, from boy to man, from girl to woman. In my doubts, no teacher, no parent, and no doctor can tell me who God wishes that I should become. So I can only get along by consulting him in prayer. His will be done, not mine, and even less somebody else's. Then it will become clear who I am and how I should feel in my skin and behave. Now I am in doubt what should be my role, my place in the family business my parents or ancestors have built up. Again, the answer should not come from my will or even from external influences and interests, but from figuring that the firm carries my family's name. This is not always the case. I know most of your companies have fantasy names. But from figuring that the firm carries my family's name and that even its employees identify with that name, and in some cases are even proud of it. If I am not apt to run the business, my parents will certainly let me know in time. And I would keep my name and identity anyway. So this, I'm coming to the end. I said, I have not made myself. Not even the self-made man has. Neither have my parents. They gave a tremendous contribution for sure, but they did not make me. In the same way, they did not make the business that they bequeathed to me. They made a great deal of effort, worked very hard, had lots of good ideas. Who made the ideas? found the right people to accompany them and work with them and for them, but it would be imprecise to say that they made the success. In the same way, one cannot say that a farmer made his harvest or the newborn accrual to his flocks and herds. Perhaps a grateful modesty is not the worst of attitudes we can take towards our existence, our talents, and our fortune. Thank you very much, and I have the word here. Ďakujem.
Ďakujeme veľmi pekne, Johannes. Nech sa páči ešte. Mám na teba pár otázok. Môžeme kdekoľvek.
The questions you have prepared.
OK, ďakujem. Mám nádej, že nech máte hodnoty, vieru postavenú kdekoľvek. Poslanie tejto prednášky prinieslo to, čo sme tým mysleli. Každý máme svoje vlastné hodnoty, ale ten základ je veľmi dôležitý. Cítiť to dobro, láskavosť, nech čokoľvek ten druhý akokoľvek má. A to je aj to, čo robíme na kongresoch. Prinášame rôznorodosť, ale tá podstata, tá hĺbka toho je tam. To, čo robíme na rodinných radách, keď sa s vami rozprávame, je vedieť inými ušami počúvať rôznorodosť a inakosť, lebo za tým všetkým sa vždy skrýva dobrý úmysel. A ja mám veľkú nádej, že aj na tejto prezentácii ste počuli tú veľkú lásku a láskavosť k tomu, k rodinným príslušníkom, rodinnému biznisu. A je to jedno, z akej viery a z akej hodnoty to prinášate. Johannes, ďakujem veľmi pekne za tvoju prezentáciu a za to, ako si sa podelil o to, v čom si vyrastal. A teraz premostím na takú viac biznisovú vec, lebo naozaj vyrastať v rodine, ktorá nesie také meno, viem, že silný odkaz, inovácie, odvahu, perfekcionizmus, toto všetko tvoj otec Adolf Kärcher vlastne priniesol. Bol veľký vizionár a on vlastne patril aj do zoznamu, a je v tom rebríčku, ako je napríklad Bosch Robert alebo Gottlieb Daimler, a vaša mama spoločne tiež sa zapísala do Siene slávy, keď prevzala firmu po otcovi. Takže aké je udržať tempo s týmto dedičstvom? S týmto majú ináč naši nástupcovia tiež veľké otázniky. Ak vybuduje mama, otec firmu, ako to mám udržať, aby to bolo tak, aby zakladateľská, majiteľská rodina bola spokojná? Takže aké to je zdediť vlastne takýto odkaz po predkoch a zároveň dovoliť si dať aj svoj vlastný otlačok?
I think I don't know much about my father because I was 8 when he passed away. But I think his thing was not to be visionary. He was an inventor and he wanted to solve technical problems. And once he had solved the problem, he was no longer interested in it. He was not interested in marketing it. And sometimes he wouldn't have had the money to pay the wages on Friday if my mother hadn't told him, hadn't reminded him. So he was only technically in solution illiterate. He was a type of a nerd. But this was the germination, the first cell of a huge business.
Vizionári to tak majú. Vymyslia, ale potom z čoho sa to zaplatí, nie vždy. To už není ich starosť.
So it was, I think, more the community of the two, my father and my mother. The mother was more practically minded, and she also, in the 30 years that she managed the company, she transmitted to their co-workers that the we was important and not the I, that the company came first. And she was in the personnel department at Mercedes-Benz before my father married her, so she knew also how to get very competent people, very good engineers, business administrators, accountants, and we always, in a sense, we always try to be the best. And we have in our Swabian culture, it's a very Protestant culture, the thing that we say either we do it right or we don't do it at all. But less than right doesn't serve. So this is a culture that she brought. Her grandfather had been a vicar. Her other grandfather had been a jeweler. And her husband had been an engineer. And the rest were all professionals from our area that has always been very intense in thinking and inventing since the 19th century, because our land did not produce very much wealth. It was not very fertile soil. But we had a seminar for vicars, for Protestant vicars, who taught us to save and taught us not to waste, which, by the way, I think is the basic principle for economy and ecology at the same time. Waste is sin. Mm-hmm. And on this culture, the business was built. Now, the main value that is in the business today alive, and it's also in these questions here, is what is a spirit? And this is something I wouldn't rather talk about. It is something you will not touch. It's something like holy. You don't know where it comes from, but it's there. And the main important things you will ask me, what is my vision of what the company should be like in 30 years. If that vision, if that spirit can be kept alive and not be disturbed, that is my greatest dream.
Rozumiem.
And it's not completely feasibility. You have no tools. It's more a question of respect to go about these holy things. They are there. They were created by the people, not only by the founders, by the family, but all the people who work together brought their best and brought their attitudes and honesty and competence, both in practical, operational things, but also in attitude questions. So one of the characteristics of the spirit is we greet each other in the company. And we greet not only from the hierarchy lower to the higher, but whoever we meet. I greet people always first. And people who visit us from outside, they feel there is a special atmosphere in the company, they like it. And that helps to get and to attain very competent professionals too.
Dobre, ďakujem. Svetové štatistiky hovoria o tom, že z prvej generácie na druhú prejde úspešne celosvetovo len okolo 37% rodinných firiem a z druhej na tretiu len nejakých 7-8%. Tie štatistiky sú dosť alarmujúce. Čo si myslíte? Z akého je to dôvodu?
I think if you go back in history and compare family business with noble families who didn't have industries or service companies, but who had land and people who worked in that land, how many of them did not pass on to the next generation? Many, many more of them. It was not so small. So what happened between one type of capitalism, land-owning nobility families, and industrial service company families later? I think the main factor is mentality, and the mentality is a consequence of decades of brainwashing, decades of influence that comes into the head of our children in school, in university, in books, by the media, and that I try to convince them that self-realization is the most important thing. Self is important, and besides self, only society and universe and Mother Earth are important. And the question about tradition, where we come from, is downplayed. So if identity can only grow from the past, from these things that we cannot change because we were born into them, I think a solution to this problem is to get aware again of our origins and to take them seriously, and to accept that if there is something that was built up and that is composed by others, and there's something so valuable as such a spirit, we have to continue it. Now, if we are not competent for it, or if we have a loose hand, we are not good for saving, then I think we should sell the shares to those in the company who are entrepreneurial. It cannot be all. But the company and the people in it and society as a whole, they deserve that the only competent business owners are there. The substitution by anonymous capital market-oriented companies is not a solution, because the link to a living factory, like in a monarchy, gives the quality, also the motivation of the people and the identification of the employees with the company that no other way is possible. You cannot reproduce this by technocratic means. So if you are told that you create your own gender, that you decide who you are, all this is poison for our society, not only for family businesses. And this is today there. These are streamings are not only to destroy families or to expropriate private capital, but they are existing and they are being done for 100 years at least by communism to destroy families, to destroy belief in our identities, to destroy values that have been gathered out of the foundation in order to have what they dream of. One tyrant and a lot of individuals. No marriages, no families, no clubs, no societies, no churches, no unions, only me and individuals. That is the dream of Adolf Hitler, that is the dream of Stalin, and that is the dream of all socialists and communists today. The elderly among you have lived it, you probably know better what I'm talking about. I have only read it in books.
Máme tu otázku. Áno, a mám nádej, že aj naši účastníci. Takže máme tu jednu otázku z publika. Aké sú vaše plány pre budúci rast firmy v ďalších generáciách?
We are in the mechanization of cleaning business, and that is a very, very huge potential still. All the cleaning jobs that are done manually can, in one way or other, be transferred into mechanized and using foreign energy, and can be intensified and made easier and time-saving. There is still a lot of scope in these markets. We're leading it, and I have no problem. We concentrated on this because we're in an oligopolistic market, so we do only cleaning around transportation and building, and there's still a lot of scope. But this is management. Okay. Management do the strategy far better than I could do it.
Johannes, ja viem, že sa to asi nepatrí, ale chcem sa spýtať, koľko máte rokov?
I'm 74 and I will have another 2 months to go when I will be 75 hopefully, and Christmas I will hand also my function as a member of the supervisory board to others.
No, to bola presne moja otázka, že hovoríte ako z pozície druhej generácie. Ale či máte pripravenú už aj tretiu generáciu a kedy odovzdáte riadenie firmy a úplne sa vyťahnete z firmy?
We were two, my sister and myself, after the founder and my mother. So we were 50-50. And my sister has 2 children, I have 6. And both my sister and myself have passed almost all of the shares already to the next generation. My oldest daughter has replaced me 2 years ago as chairman of the supervisory board. And my nephew, my sister's son, is a vice president for sustainability. He's a biologist. Now, I see my task mainly not to keep the business and the wealth in the family. I see it more in keeping the family in the business and to bring those who are not still working in the company even closer, not necessarily for operational activities, but to being visible and to being present and to take part of these people. Because we don't have to be better engineers, but they have to understand that we are cherishing what they are doing in the company. And that is necessary for them to go to look toward the customer and to improve.
Myslím si, že vzhľadom k času máme poslednú otázku, ktorú máme z publika. Ďakujeme za ňu. Akú rolu hrá filantropia vo vašom biznise?
Of course, we have a lot of sponsoring activities, in social activities, in sports, in arts. For me personally and for the family until now, it was very important that we have been helping for more than 30 years the International Bach Academy in Stuttgart, which preserves the heritage of Johann Sebastian Bach and plays spiritual music on a very, very high level. The problem that is now happening is that as long as I was in charge, I had always my sister on board and could help them generously with funds. Now, my daughter has only a 1/12 of the company, and she has to care for the other 7 shareholders, and she wants to found a committee to decide on the donation strategy of the company. That committee has gathered only once in 1.5 years. That gives me hope, because if it really is sensible, that it would mean that everybody has their own preference, and we will split the available funds in 7 different, one is for horses, one is for art, one is for I don't know what, and we can no longer help the Bach Academy. But for me personally, the Bach Academy, who is producing all the church cantatas of Bach, there are 200 of them, on world level quality, I hope they can continue to do it, because that is a question of spirit. And when you invest in something that you are cherishing, it has always a benefit not only for the philanthropic or non-profit side, but also for yourself. Investing means giving value where already value is, not only in economic value, but also in cultural value.
S nádhernou témou sme ukončili tento rozhovor. Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Naše rodinné firmy, všetky, ktoré poznám, tiež veľmi podporujú v regiónoch, vo svojich mestách rôzne združenia a tiež vychádzajú zo svojich hodnot, takže tento odkaz, ktorý ste teraz nechal, myslím si, že môže v nás všetkých rezonovať. Nie len pre svoju rodinu, ale aj pre spoločenstvo, pre náš región môžeme byť veľmi, veľmi výživný a obohacujúci. Johannes, veľmi pekne vám ďakujem.
Ďakujeme krásne.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.